If you're taking on the role of being a director, you've signed up for a big task.
Making sure companies pay for performance is the biggest issue facing compensation committees.
I think the dynamic is changing, and I think the basis for competition is going to shift to technology and innovation.
Corporate Board Member presents the Board Governance Series, with series contributors PwC, Meridian Compensation Partners, and Board Vantage. On this edition of the Board Governance Series, Comp Committees 101, covering the basics, with Ann Polk, Partner, Meridian Compensation Partners.
Hi, I'm Laura Finn, Web Editor of BoardMember.com, and today I'm happy to welcome Ann Polk, Partner at Meridian Compensation Partners, to the boardroom. Ann, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you've come to give some tips to new compensation committee members, which is great because, as you're well aware, the Comp Committee is the hottest seat on the board right now, between say on pay and resulting litigation, and an overall focus on pay packages, governance, and all details related to it. It really has become a contentious area for board members.
Absolutely. We believe everyone would agree today that serving on a compensation committee is not for the faint of heart. Over the past few years, and in particular since the proxy disclosure rules were revamped, this committee has become very high profile, even more high profile than the audit committee. It's got the greatest potential for controversy, in part because there's no rule book to follow. There are technical, regulatory, and other requirements that continue to increase exponentially. And then, of course, we have various constituencies who want to have a voice and a vote in the process, including shareholder advisory groups, social activists, the media, government, and others.
With that daunting background, what can new compensation committee members do to make sure they get up to speed as soon as possible?
Well, to be an effective committee member requires a certain and high degree of knowledge and expertise. So although we could come up with a long list of tips, we've limited today's comments to 3 that we believe will serve new committee members especially well. The first tip is this: be realistic about the learning curve. It's simply going to take some time for new committee members to become sufficiently familiar with the company's programs and the related issues that will be factors in all of the decisions that have to be made while they serve on the committee. The new committee member has typically served on the board for at least a year, if not longer, and that means they've been exposed to the company's programs and philosophy and key decisions around senior executive pay at a fairly high level. However, as a member of the committee, they're going to have to develop a much more detailed level of knowledge and expertise about the programs than they likely will have as they start out.
What are some of the ways new Comp Committee members can gain the knowledge they'll need to serve effectively on the Compensation Committee?
Well, that leads straight to our second tip, which is take advantage of the resources that will be available to you. One of the many ways that Meridian clients orient their new Compensation Committee members is to provide a resource guide or a briefing book, and also to conduct one-on-one orientation sessions with those who are involved in the decision-making process. So let's talk about the resource guide first. That generally includes key background information and reference materials both on the committee operations as well as on the company programs. And let's talk about the sections one by one. The committee operations section will generally include a copy of the committee's charter and then also a detailed annual calendar. The charter, of course, outlines the duties and responsibilities of the committee, but the annual calendar serves as a practical guide for understanding what topics will be discussed at each committee meeting and what decisions in particular will be required at a specific meeting. If we move on to the next major section, it generally includes summaries of key program elements, such as what is our pay philosophy, what's our competitive objective, do we have a committee-approved peer group and benchmarking approach, and summaries of key design features such as salary administration, annual and long-term incentives, and any benefits and perquisites that might be provided. These summaries generally include not only the current program design, but also provide some historical context so the new committee member can understand how the programs have evolved. If we turn to the orientation sessions, these involve one-on-one or group discussions with the various parties involved, the Compensation Committee Chair, the Head of Human Resources, the Internal Legal, and also the committee's outside independent consultant. The committee chair can provide a valuable framework for the new committee member in terms of helping them understand more quickly what topics might be sensitive and delicate, and also providing a lot of the institutional knowledge that they simply can't gain elsewhere or by reading documents. The Head of Human Resources spends time orienting the new committee member to the overall compensation programs and human resources function at the company, and providing some level of detail on each of the subparts. But it's an important discussion to have because it's helpful for the committee member to understand how pay programs align across the organization.
Of course.
The legal session might be one of the driest there is, but it's nonetheless very valuable because it provides an overview of the legal and regulatory requirements that a new committee member needs to be aware of. And then finally, the discussion with the outside committee consultant can help establish the governance parameters for that relationship and perhaps provide a broader perspective on the topics than they can gain elsewhere.
So, Marianne, what is your third and final tip?
Our third and final tip for today, that is challenge yourself. The new committee members should be setting some goals for themselves in terms of what they should be able to describe about the company's programs within a reasonable time frame. For example, what are the key elements of our program? Who are our peers? How do our incentive plans work? What performance measures do we use and why? And how do they align with our business goals? For example, if we have a growth strategy, how do we measure and reward for that? Are our programs sufficiently transparent? That is, can our shareholders understand how our programs work simply by reading our CD&A? And more importantly, do they support the decisions that we've made in their say-on-pay votes? Are our programs balanced between executives and shareholders, or are they tilted too much in one direction versus another? If new committee members can answer questions like these within their first 6 months to a year, that will be a noteworthy accomplishment.
These are great questions for our audience to keep in mind as they're new comp committee members. And we're also going to put your email up on the screen, Marianne, so that if any of our viewers have specific questions for you on your tips or the resource guide or the orientation, they can ask you directly.
That would be fine. We'd be happy to help.
Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Board Governance Series, Marianne.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for watching.
Marianne Polk can be reached at mapolk@meridiancp.com. The Board Governance Series is a presentation of corporate board member and NYSE Euronext Company.